Okay, everybody. Welcome to today's FASTTRAK webinar series, another edition of our ongoing webinars produced every week. Today we're going to be covering costing, invoicing, back-end accounting, which will also include some of the pay and other things back there with what you can do with the finalizing area back there. So today, Adam will not be here, but we have a picture of him if in case anybody needs to have a reminder of what he looks like. Myself, Brian, and Eddie, president owner of FASTTRAK Livery Systems, is here also to assist us with any questions that we may have today. So today's agenda, we're going to be covering within the costing and invoicing area, how to finalize jobs and determine the final costs on them, as well as creating pay for drivers, affiliates, and agents, also paying out reservations and or creating invoices for those reservations or groups of reservations. Also be touching on the AR management and managing invoices as well as payments back in the costing and invoicing area. So let's go ahead and get started. Going to the FASTTRAK program. A couple of things, just reminders, there's a lot of settings that were set up in the previous webinars, not only in customer profiles, but your general settings as to how different invoices appear, how the actions are taken there. I'll try to touch on some of those today. But if you need a refresher on those were covered underneath the general settings as well as customers. So the first thing before we do any finalizing of any reservations, keep in mind that a job must have a status of dropped. So in going through these, I'll just go ahead and mark a couple of these as dropped right now. Normally, in most organizations, you would have gone through the en route, on location, on board, on dropped. I'm going to go ahead and mark these as dropped right now, eliminating some of that process there. Keep in mind that you can use the multiple update had I wanted to drop all of those at one time. Once a reservation has been completed, and by completed we mean it has a status of dropped on it, what we would do then is we're going to go into the costing and invoicing area within the program. The first place you're going to see is here underneath the finalize job cost and pay area. In here, you will see some reservations possibly, or none. Normally, you would be seeing current reservations. Now, the reservations that I just dropped will not be showing up in this area until I pull them back into this area. In order to do that, what you are going to do is you're going to click on the Get Completed Jobs up in the upper left-hand corner of the screen there. In so doing, what it will do, it will bring in all of the jobs that have a status of dropped. You can see it told me that it brought in 5 completed jobs into there. And now I, in the billing area, have control of these reservations. If I were to go back out to the booking and logistics area, you would see that these reservations now have a green icon over on the left side, as well as they are italicized. That is an indication to me that they are now within the costing and invoicing area. The dispatch still can open those up, but they have no control of them, meaning they can't make any changes to those reservations. Any changes that need to be affected are now controlled by the billing area here, as we can see back here. So, moving through here, I have a list of my reservations which are completed. Now there's a couple other things that I can see here. There's a drop down here of completed jobs. There's also a drop down showing open status jobs. Normally, when you look in here, you would not see as many jobs as are listed in this screen right now. This screen shows me jobs that are past their scheduled drop-off time, but do not have a status of dropped on them. As you can see, these are from a couple of days ago, and they still have not been status of dropped. So normally what you would do is just kind of glance in here every once in a while. If you saw something from several days ago, it would be something that you would want to address with dispatch. Why aren't these statuses dropped on these reservations? Another thing in here is the excluded from billing. Excluded from billing gives me a list of all of the reservations which one reason or another I've decided I am not going to bill. Perhaps it was a canceled job that was canceled within the parameters of your needing to bill the customer or not. They just go into a holding area here for you to review. And again, I can go back 60 days, 90 days, as far as I want to. So going back over to the completed jobs. One thing in here that you can do is you have the ability to change the columns that are in your view. By selecting the choose columns, I can add different things to this grid here based upon what it is that I need to have in front of me while I'm doing my finalizing. As you see, if I click on that option right there and click the save, I now have a list here that tells me whether the job has been, or the pay has been approved on that job. A couple other things I can do in here. A job that has been pulled back to dispatch or into the billing area for one reason or another, maybe dispatch still needs to make some changes to it. By highlighting that reservation, selecting the return to dispatch, it will return control back to the dispatch area. You'll see it leaves this window here, and dispatch can now open that reservation back up and make changes to it. Other things I can do here, by selecting the View Res option, I have the ability to open up the reservation. If I needed to make any changes to it, I could open it up and make the changes to it in here. I can also view the customer. Perhaps I had questions about the pricing or whatever was set in there for the various things. I can click on the View Customer and open the customer profile up to get more information available to me. In this one, you'll notice that there's a little note indicator there indicating that there is a note that was set in that reservation during the dispatching process. If I wanted to view that note, I can click on the View Notes option, and it would open up the notes for that. I could see what those notes were. Perhaps they were notes from the driver entered during the closeout process using his driver app, or they could have been dispatch notes. Perhaps dispatch wanted to address an incident or something there. You can also see that in this one column, I have a little envelope there with a red exclamation point. And what that's telling me is that there's an incident logged on this reservation. So normally, again, from the billing area, I would click on the View Incidents, and it would bring up the list of incidents that had been logged on that reservation, letting me know that something needed to be addressed. Maybe it was a billing issue. I can also, from here, if I need to email, view any of the documents from there. I can also, as you can see, view a receipt or email a receipt. Now, from here, normally what I would be doing is going ahead and starting the costing process, but maybe I had some in here that were the canceled ones that we're not going to bill the customer today for one reason or another. Maybe it was a driver error, or perhaps they had canceled in the correct amount of time. I can select the Exclude from Billing down here in the lower left-hand corner. And what it'll do is it'll ask me, am I sure? I'm going to say yes. And then it's going to prompt me whether I want to calculate pay for that reservation or not. Perhaps the driver was on the way to the job and you're going to go ahead and pay the driver but not bill the customer on this one. I would go ahead and select yes. It would create the pay for it. However, in this instance, if I select no, you'll see again that it left this window and it actually went over to the excluded from billing section. So highlighting, looking at these reservations here, we'll go ahead and start with this one here. Once I highlight it, as you can see, I still do not have total control of this side over here. However, once I click on the Edit Finalize Reservation, I now have the control over here to be able to affect any of the information. In here, I will have various things such as the pickups and drop-off times. Again, these would have normally been entered during the dispatch status. However, if I needed to make any adjustments on them, I merely click here and adjust those times to whatever times I need them to be. Over on the right side, you will see all of the time or all of the costs for this reservation based upon whatever was entered during the booking procedure there. From here, again, I can change a pricing plan if I needed to. I could change the vehicle type, should it have been actually a different vehicle. I can update any of the rates I need to over here simply by adding them or deleting them out if I need to. Everything I do over here is finalizing and costing out that reservation for me to finish it. If I had any questions about how this price came about, I can always click here on the view locations and it would give me the pickup, drop off, as well as any stops which occurred during that reservation. Now, once I've got all that done, what I would be doing is calculating the driver pay. Once I click on the driver pay option there, it is going to automatically calculate the pay based upon the driver settings, as well as transfer over any of the additional items or variables which should have been moved over to the driver. As you can see, I can edit anything here. Click on the edit, change those amounts if I need to. I can also delete any item if I need to by selecting the delete option there. I can add an additional driver to this reservation. Perhaps there was a guide or maybe this driver had to halfway through the reservation leave and somebody else took it over. I could go ahead and click on the add option there and go ahead and add that additional driver to the reservation, meaning I could have two drivers paid for that reservation. Also down below here, you'll see that it calculated the commission pay based upon the commission that I had added to that reservation on the profile or what I added to it. Now, again, I can add, edit, delete any of those items there. So once I have this, all of the totals done here, there's several options that I can do. I can save it, meaning that it would stay in this window for me to later come back and deal with. I could cancel, maybe I made a mistake. I'm not canceling the reservation, I'm just canceling all of my actions at this time by selecting the cancel option there. I can create an invoice for it, meaning that it's going to create an invoice for this single reservation, or I can move it to build invoices where later I can add multiple reservations to the invoice. If you'll notice in this particular one, I have a deposit already on this reservation of $25. So when I look down here, it tells me how much is due on this thing. Now, if I were going to pay this reservation out, the balance, and be completed with it right now, I would go up here to where it says payments and deposits, click on that option there. From here, I can add an additional payment, whether it be cash, check, credit card, whatever we have. It knows the amount that's due of $748. Again, I could select any of the options there, leave it as credit card if I would like. If I'm going to charge this credit card, I'm simply going to click on the charge credit card. It's going to confirm I want to do that. It's going to come back with an approval number letting me know that it was completed. I will go ahead and click OK there. Click close. And as you notice down here now, it has a 0 balance remaining on that reservation. So normally at this point, I would simply create a reservation. So let's go ahead and create that reservation now. It's going to confirm I want to do it. And in so doing, you can see that it left this window. This window, and this message here again is a setting we addressed later. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that for now. This window should always be a decreasing window. As you are going through here and finishing up today or yesterday, it should always be decreasing. It should not be increasing as you're going through the day. Normally, I wouldn't see things back from January 30th or February 14th. I would only be working on current days sitting in here. So let's go ahead and take another reservation here. This time we're going to do a little different on this one. I'm going to go ahead and click on the edit option. It gives me all of the functionality there to do what I need to do, change the prices, add any payments as I stated before. Also, I now have the ability to do the driver pay. Go ahead and click on that. It's going to calculate the pay. The one thing that it is going to do now, instead of me paying this job out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save and move to build invoices. In this instance, this customer, perhaps they have 4, 5, 10 jobs this week, and I'm going to wait till the end of the week to go ahead and build them. I'm going to go ahead and click on the save and move to build invoices. In doing that, again, as you will see, it will leave this window. It is calculating the pay in the background. But where that reservation went this time, instead of over to the manage invoices where the first one went, if I go over here and look at the manage invoices, by default, you're going to see not paid. I'm going to select paid in full. That way I can see the one that I paid here a second ago. You can see it has a create date there. But the one I moved to build invoices went over to this area here, into the build invoices. When you come into this window, on the left side, you're going to see a list of all of your customers that are waiting for you to create invoices for them. Now, normally, hopefully, you wouldn't find this many sitting in here, but once I selected this A test, you'll see it opens up the ability for me to see all the reservations that are waiting for them to be added to an invoice. Now from here, again, I have a couple of options. I can either move one at a time down merely by dragging and dropping it down there. The bottom part is the list of reservations that I'm going to put on the reservation, or reservation on the invoice, excuse me. I can drag it back up if I would like. I can use my control key and select just a couple of them, move selected to invoice, and you'll see that they came down there. If I made a mistake, simply click the cancel start over, and they've moved back up to the top. If I want to move them all down here, click on the move all to invoice, and they're all down here waiting for me to create the invoice for them. As you can see, it has a total of those 3 invoices. It's giving me a little bit of information about the customer here. Keep in mind, if I need to get into that profile, I have some sort of questions, simply by clicking on the open profile record, it would open up the customer profile and let me see information in there, or even perhaps change information in there. Now, over here, I could add an invoice message if there was not already one within the profile. Invoice notes, perhaps I want to convey a special message to the customer. I can add something there. And then the collection details would have come in from the customer profile. I also have a default credit card, which is set within their profile, or I could change that if I want something different, or even add a new one there by clicking the Add button. Now, here in the lower right-hand corner, there's something called Create Invoice Action. I have mine set to take no action. There's a couple other options here. I can show the invoice on the screen. That will, upon creating the invoice, display the invoice for you to view. I'm going to go ahead and set that one there. But a couple other things, I could print it automatically, email it automatically. Now, normally, if you already have the setting within the customer profile to email invoices automatically, that would occur on its own. However, you can have it set back here also. And then the take no action, which I had mine on, is it just simply creates the invoice without displaying it to you. Now, in the beginning, usually recommended that you show the invoice just so you get a feel for what it looks like and make sure it's correct before you start emailing them out. However, once you're comfortable with everything, go ahead and flip them over to the other options there. One other thing I can do here, the invoice date by default is always today's date. As you can see, this is set for March 6th. However, if I needed this to be previous to today's date, I can simply select the calendar and move it back to whatever date I needed it to be in. So for instance, I was finishing up February billing, but I didn't get around to it until March 6th, but I still needed it to show in February. Normally what I would do is flip this back to the 28th. It will create a invoice date of the 28th, and it will also start all of its aging process on that date. So I'm going to go ahead and create this invoice now. And again, keep in mind that I have it set to show invoice on screen. Once I create that invoice, it's going to make sure I want to do it. I'm going to select on yes. It's telling me that I have different collection details there. Normally they would all be the same, but it still lets me go ahead and create the invoice there. I'm going to go ahead and click on yes, and it's going to display the invoice for me to view. Do this? Oh, maybe I should do this. Should click on yes if you want it to do it. So it creates the invoice. It's telling me it's creating the invoice. As you can see, the invoice now has an invoice number on it up at the top up there. Has your logo if you've already loaded that into the program. Remember, that can be done underneath company settings on the company logo tab there. It's got the information, all the details about those reservations there. And if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, it's going to get a total there. Now you'll notice here that we have Euro set. This is a setting that you can have a global setting. You can also set it in each customer profile. If different customers pay different monetary values, you can do that. Now from here, I can print it if I want to. I can even go ahead and email it from here by selecting the email option. I'm going to go ahead and close this one, because I viewed it and everything looked good to me. And as you can see, I can keep working down through all of my various customers here. One thing, keep in mind, perhaps I have a reservation that I've pushed all the way back to here, and additional information has come to me that perhaps we need to add more fees, or we're not going to charge this customer, whatever it might be. Keep in mind, you are not stuck once you get it back here. If I highlight it, any one of these, select the reservation, I can move to finalized. In doing that, it will remove it from this window and it'll push it back to the finalized job cost and pay area there. One other thing we can do here while we're sitting here, if I have created an invoice and I later find out that I forgot a reservation or I needed to add a reservation to an invoice, simply by highlighting the name, selecting the reservation, I can then go ahead and click on Append to Existing Invoice. What would happen here is it would bring up a list of all of the invoices for this customer that have not been paid, letting me know that I can add that to that one. Let me see if I can find one here real quick. I probably can. Okay, so here's all of the invoices for this customer that still have balances due on it. I can go ahead and add that reservation to any one of these invoices. So that being said, keep in mind that even though you get a reservation all the way back to even onto the invoices, you have the ability to remove it from there. It'll go back to this area here. You can then push it back to the finalize area, make your changes, and then pull it all the way back to that. Now, I'll go to the Manage Invoice area here so you can see what I was describing about removing an invoice or a reservation from an invoice. This reservation or this invoice right here is the one that we just created a couple of minutes ago. By selecting the plus sign over on the left here, it lets me see all of the reservations that are inside of that invoice. From here, as I stated, I can highlight that, remove that line item, and in so doing, it asks me if I want to, it'll take it off of that invoice, and it is back over here for me to make adjustments by moving it back to finalized, or I could even move it all the way back to dispatch once I get it all the way over to that. So we're going to take that one, put it back on that invoice here. As you can see, it is now gone. It is back over on the invoice. This window here will give a list of all of your invoices based upon your setting up here at the left, whether it's paid, not paid, partially paid, balance, canceled, so on and so forth. If I select all of those wonderful options there, it's going to give me a date range based upon what I have selected here. But in this instance, let's go back 60 days. Go ahead and do a search, and it's going to bring me a list of all of the invoices that have occurred over that time. Some things I can see here, balances, these are how much people still owe me on these. Balance of 0 indicates that it's been paid. Working my way down through there, I can see all of those things, the various things. I can also search for any confirmation number I want. Let me get one of these numbers here, 61218. So if I were to go in here, type in a confirmation number, perhaps a customer calls you up and has a question about a confirmation. They don't know which invoices it is on, nor do you off the top of your head. If you have the confirmation number, do a search and it'll bring you the invoice that has that confirmation number on it. So you don't have to go searching all over the place to determine where things are. Go ahead and delete that back out of there. I can do a search for an invoice instead of having to go through date ranges to find things. I'm going to go ahead and clear this up a little bit so it looks cleaner here. And let's do 14 days. How's that? Okay. I can do a search by a client, corporate client. I can do a search for a customer, any of the ones in there. It will bring me their invoices. If you're running multiple companies, as you can see, I can do a search based upon which company the invoices are on. Remember the little indicator, this was addressed a couple of webinars ago about the company setup, how you can have different companies and they would have different color indicators. That's what we see over here on the right side by doing any of those there. I can search by reference PO, credit card approval numbers. So there's all kinds of options on finding things within there. Other actions I can take here. As you can see up here, I have the selected invoices. So as you can see, none of these have an indication that they've been emailed. However, if I want to email it, I can click on the email selected invoice. It's going to bring up the list of people who are on that account who are selected to receive that email Again, I can always add in somebody else there. You can add an additional message, which will be appended to that email. You also have the ability, again, to add attachments. Attachments were addressed in the webinar about global settings underneath there. But again, by selecting any one of those, I could add an attachment on there. Perhaps it's a coupon or as a gift certificate you want to send out to somebody, 15% off next time you book with us. I also have the ability to select a standard invoice or a summary invoice. Let me show you what those two are here. Anytime I want to view it, I simply click on the view selected. By default, it's going to have standard invoice style based upon whatever is in the customer profile. So this customer has it set to be standard. However, I can at any time provide them a compressed view if I want to, even in that email. So let's go ahead and see what that compressed view looks like. So if I highlight it and view it, as you will see now, everything is on one page. Still has all the information, your company, their company information, but it is brought down to single line items for each of the reservations instead of all the details for those reservations. And again, down at the bottom, it has the total down there. So depending upon your customer preference, you do have the ability to change the format that they view or send them a different one if they would like to at any time. You can edit invoice notes here by typing something in here, whatever it might be, that will be added to the invoice. Perhaps this customer wants you to change the address for this invoice. Simply select on the address. You can change it for this invoice. If you need to add it to the profile for the future, go ahead and select the option there, and that would be the address that would be added to their profile for all of their future invoices. Once I have the invoices back here, now it's time to go ahead and start making payments on them or receiving payments on them if we would. As you can see here, there is a column here, dates and billing, lets me know how long they've been sitting here. This affects your AR, letting you know how late people are. In order to pay these reservations, there's a couple of options I can do. I can manual pay it. Meaning I'm not utilizing the integrated credit card processing. Select that, select how I'm going to pay it. I can select cash, check, whatever it might be, put in the amount for it, and it'll zero that out. Let's go ahead and pay this one here. Just do a manual pay on it. I'll select the manual pay. I'm going to go ahead and select cash because they brought in cash. Whatever I want in this area here. Payment in full. Go ahead and click OK on that. And as you see, it now has a zero balance on it, meaning that that one's been entirely paid. The one below it, if I want to charge the card, I would select the charge card option. Now you'll see here, it has their credit card already populated to it. If I need to add a new one, I simply select on the add and that would be populated to that. If I want to charge the card, I'm going to go ahead and click on the charge card. If I want to select yes, it's going to go ahead and charge the card. It gave me an approval number. I'm going to click OK, and it now has a zero balance on it. Now, one thing you'll notice that I did have unused deposits sitting here. Those would have been deposits that would have been posted onto the customer profile for future use. Had I wanted to use one of those deposits rather than posting a new pay onto it, I would have selected on the deposit options down at the bottom. I can select which deposit I want to use, and I would have applied it to that invoice rather than charging them an additional amount. I can do that from there. Couple of things I can do in here also. This invoice here, if I need to cancel the invoice, now a cancel invoice does not cancel the reservations, it does not delete everything, it simply cancels the invoice. In this instance, I'm going to go ahead and cancel it. If I select the cancel invoice, it is going to say yes. And as you can see, I will no longer be able to see that canceled invoice. However, if I select my canceled option up at the top up there, do my search, this one is gray, indicating that it was canceled. Now, where did those reservations go? Well, they went back to the billed invoices. They're back over here. If I need to create a new invoice, I can simply select what I need to, move, create my invoice, and I will have a new invoice for that. So normally if we're going to cancel an invoice, we've got an invoice all messed up and we need to just start all over again with it. We can cancel it, move them back to the billed invoices, move it back to the job finalized cost, adjustments, and then recreate the invoice. Okay, so going back to this one here, this one does have a payment on it. If I highlight that invoice, click on the little plus sign, you'll see I now have a tab called Applied Payments on it. Previously, I didn't have that one there. Once I click on that Applied Payments, here gives me the list of the payments that were received for that particular invoice. Now, what I can do from here, I can void the charge, being that it's a credit card payment that was submitted electronically. I can void it. Voids are done the same day prior to batching out in the evening. Credit, I need to give back some of the money because they want to split payments with something else. I can do a credit charge. It'll ask me how much I want to give back. As you can see, I can either give it all back or some of it, depending upon what I'm trying to do there. I also have the ability to edit the payment or reverse the payment. Now, it won't let me do it on these because these are electronic submittals, so my only options are to credit or void. However, I think if I go back up to that one there, click on that one, Applied Payments, I have a cash payment here. They gave me cash. They said, no, we want our cash back. We want to charge it on a credit card. You simply highlight it, reverse the payment, put in whatever reason you want there, click OK, and that invoice will now go back, as you can see, to an unpaid invoice. It now has its full amount on there. If I look at the payments, you see that it has money in, money out. It's keeping track of all of the actions with money, being able to keep track of where the money went and where it came in. Okay.
Brian?
Yes.
Lauren has her hand raised. You want to see what her question is in this area?
Well, what is it? Huh? What's her question?
I don't have a question. She has her hand raised. You'll have to unmute her so she can talk to you.
I'm gonna chat. Can we change an account number in billing and costing? An account number. I'm gonna need a little bit more detail about what you mean by an account number. If you're meaning change who it's getting billed to, in that instance, yes. You can't do it in here because it's already back in the invoicing area and things are tied into specific things. All you can do from here is you would have to cancel the invoice. You would move it back to the billed invoice area. From there, you move it back to the job finalize area. From there, you're going to return it to dispatch. Once it gets back to the dispatch area, you have the ability, by highlighting it, editing it, from here, you can now change that customer by selecting that and then change whichever customer you want to that thing. You can't do it all the way back in the billing area because it has already removed itself and put back into a billing area where things can't be changed like that. So any changes that are done need to be done out in the dispatching area there.
The
Okay.
invoicing tables have a different reference, so therefore, if we allowed it to be changed in the invoicing tables, there would be a disconnect between how it was originally booked and the way it was billed. So in order to have that continuity from a booking point of view and have everything tied together, it has to go back into the costing area. I'm sorry, it has to go back into the main grid.
Yes, exactly. From programming terms there, the reservation and the invoice are two separate items. The invoice sits on its own. It knows about the reservations, but you can't change it at that point. You got to start it all over again and bring it all the way through there. So hopefully did that answer that question there? I'll go ahead and say okay. Okay. From here, there are a couple of things I can do. If I need to, I can export out my grid. If I needed to pull this out and put it into an Excel spreadsheet for one reason or another, I can simply click on the grid export, and it allows me to bring that out into an Excel spreadsheet for me to manipulate into different forms if I need to. There is something down here called a billing status report. I'll go ahead and show you quickly what this means. If I click on that, this really gives me an overview of where my reservations are in the whole process, about where I need to be catching up with things, I guess, if I would. As you can see, I have a list of jobs that are in the finalize area. These are the jobs that I'm looking there. These are in the open status area, again, telling me jobs that should have already had a status of dropped on them or another one. A couple other things down in here. So yeah, it's just giving me all those details if I want to quickly print that out and figure out all that stuff without having to go to each one of those tabs. I have that ability there. I think that covers all that there. One other thing that I want to do from here, the next step I would be looking into is my manage payments area. Now, manage payments area would give me a list of all of my payments that I have received on any given date range. As you can see here, I can select my date range. I can funnel it by a particular customer or not customer, by my companies if I need to. I can also filter it perhaps by Visa. By doing that, I'm only going to have my Visas here in front of me. Go back to all there. It gives me all the payments that were received over that date range there. I can look for a particular customer if I need to, or a corporate client, again, simply by selecting any of those items there. Deposits would give me a list of all of the deposits that I have received over a date range. You'll also notice here that this one had a $25 original amount, but it now has a balance of 0 on it. That indicates that I used it on a reservation or an invoice in that instance. This one here, I have not received, or I have not utilized that balance yet. That is still sitting on a reservation. Couple of things I can do in here, either the payments or deposits area. Being that this is a credit card charge, and again, I can tell you that because it has an approval number here. You'll notice the one above does not have an approval number, indicating that I had manually posted that. I can void it or credit it if I would like. Same thing occurs in here in the payment window here. Now, the cash ones, I can reverse my payments if I need to. I can edit it. Perhaps I thought they gave me $44.98, but it was actually $34.98. If I go edit it here, what it'll actually do is it will now make the invoice partially paid because it does not have the full $44.98 on there, and it would show that amount there. Reversing payment lets me reverse it. As you can see, this one here was reversed. That's why I have a positive 44 and a negative 44 there. Some things you can see down here at the bottom. I have my the totals down there, letting me see how much Visa and cash I had received over any given time. If you're utilizing the integrated processing through one of the partners of either Chosen Payments or drawing a blank here, Eddie, Chosen
Future
Payments.
Business Solutions.
You have the ability to query your gateway. If I go in here, I could run a report. In so doing, there's nothing in there, as we can see, but this number here would also match these numbers here. One thing to keep in mind, I get asked this quite a bit, why things don't balance every once in a while. Always make sure that if you are using any integrated processing, when you see a Visa or a MasterCard or American Express, it does have an approval number. If it does not have an approval number, what it means is that somebody manually posted a payment and said it was a Visa rather than doing an electronic charge on that particular one there. Deposit usage. This lets me see amounts that have been used over time, letting me run statements there and see what was used and not used over there. Okay. Last area in here, manage AR. When I go into my manage AR, my accounts receivables, as you can see, it's going to give me a list of all of my accounts receivable. It's going to break it down over 15-day increments, giving me the amounts that are out there. Apparently, we're not very good at collecting 181 days out. However, I do have the ability to look at different things here. If I want to look at all periods, it gives me a list of everything. And again, over here on my right side, I got the indicator of which company I'm looking at. Invoiced to client. By doing that, it breaks it down into each of the clients, letting me know where they are in the whole collection process. Instead of giving it out into each individual thing there. I can always do a grid export here if I want to pull this out and look at anything additional there. I can look at my paid, unpaid, so on and so forth, sort it by company if I need to. I also have the ability to do aging by date. So if we go back in here, it's always going to default to today's date. But let's say I wanted to know what my aging was on February 1st. You're going to see some of these things disappear here. The 44.98 should disappear on me. When I do a search, it is no longer there. The invoices that we created today did not exist back in February, so they are not going to show up in any of my aging reports based on that date. Again, I can do an export there if I need to. Anything I want to do with that. Other things I can do back in here are my statements. Statements allow me to create statements for all my customers or selected customers if I want to. Now, there are settings, and we addressed this previously in the System Global Settings on the Invoicing tab. Invoice and costing tab, whether you can have these automatically generated or you can manually generate these depending upon your preferences. You can also have them set to automatically email out, or you can manually email them out as well. However, if I want to create a statement, I can click on the Create Statement Now. It's going to ask me if yes. And then here, it's going to give me the option to do all customers. Now, I'm not going to do all customers. That'll take too long, but I'm going to go ahead and click on the no. And by doing that, it allows me to select which customer I want to generate my statement for. So in that one, I'm going to select that customer, click OK. It's going to generate a statement for that particular customer. As you can see, this is the statement run that I just did right there. There's their statement. However, keep in mind, you can always go back to any of your previous statements if you need to do anything with them. Let's go to the one previous to that. It had a little bit more information on there. From here, I can email them all out automatically if I don't have them set to email automatically. I can highlight any one of them and email it by clicking on the email selected. I can view it. If I click on the view selected, it'll give me a breakdown that can be sent to them of how much they owe. And it also gives a list of the invoices that are composing that statement. I can print them all. I can save them all to PDF if I would like to as well. So those are some of the things you can do there with your various statements and things in there. Now, one other area is the accounting system integration. I'm going to touch on this for a little bit, but I'm going to let Eddie really address this area here because he's the trained accountant. This lets you see, I'm going to go ahead and calculate totals today. And this is going to give me operating cash, accounts receivable. It gives you basically general ledger entries that you can enter in. You can do an export there as well. You can filter by company if you need to, anything I need to do there. You can query various things there. And again, these become your general ledger entries as for your QuickBooks or whatever you are using. If you are utilizing the QuickBooks integration, you would have this option available to you here. You can create a QuickBooks batch. Hopefully this will work there. Yeah, okay, so we don't have one there. Okay, and at that time you could then import it into your QuickBooks. Again, basically what it's going to be doing is providing this information here. Eddie, you want to add anything into this part here about the accounting part?
Yeah, let me just add, good job on that too, by the way, but the area to the left that has the boxes for operating cash, sales, accounts receivable, and so forth, in accountants' terms, those would be T accounts, and they're showing the transactions in and out of cash, AR had a beginning balance. If we paid certain things, we applied deposits, we may have had some sales in terms of creating new invoices. So it's giving you a progression. We then take all that data, and the one area I want to isolate on just a little bit, because I think we all know that, you know, the money we took in and managed payments went into cash. The amount of billing today created sales. The amount of adjustments or discounts that we made created the value in the sales allowances and discounts and so on. And when we get into accrued accounts receivable, you know, notice we have a lot. That's because Brian had a lot sitting in that costing screen. And this particular system says, hey, it's not billed yet. So we're going to have to accrue that part in an entry that we make in our books to say we have some completed jobs that aren't billed yet that I need to account for as an asset to the company, and also as income statement sales. The one I want to concentrate on, though, is the deferred liabilities. A lot of companies don't account for this, but if you do wedding or any kind of large conventions where you're getting $20,000 and $30,000 and $40,000 in on some convention in the summer, let's say, you want to pay attention to this, because these are deferred liabilities, meaning it's a liability today, and we've deferred. It's deferred until a point in time, meaning that it'll be a liability until you actually do the job. And once the job is performed, as Brian showed you with the application of deposits, once the job is performed, these deposits, which are cash in the bank, and the deferred liability aspect of it is I've got to go do the job still to really earn that money, will stay and needs to be recognized in your balance sheet as an obligation that you have to return that money if you don't do the job. It could be that the entire program cancels and they want their money back, and you'd be obligated to give it back. So concentrate on that one and how the deposits are handled. Click back on Manage Payments for me just real quick, Brian.
Sure.
And if you looked at, click on the Deposits tab.
Yep.
Yep. You notice the balance part of it over there. The balance is what we're looking at there as the liability. So any amount in that very right-hand column that says balance is amounts that are accumulated in the deferred liability, and it just shows deposits that have a future date on them to be used. Take me back over to the accounting system again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all about the first column, of course, our accrued payroll, and then totals for each. But in our middle section there, what I wanted to present to everyone was we have these key accounts that show the transactions in and out, but in a summary form, what would a general journal entry look like if I just wanted to make a general journal entry for all the activity that took place in FASTTRAK? And keep in mind, we're doing some accounting for you, but we're not doing full GL accounting. We're not accounting for inventory. We're not paying rent. We're not writing checks or anything like that. So we have to find out where our piece of the puzzle fits into your entire accounting system. And you could be using, like Brian said, QuickBooks or Quicken or Money or any of the products out there for GL accounting. And this one was designed, and I think we designed it pretty well enough at least that we haven't sold a lot of the integration for QuickBooks. And the reason for that is that was a fairly expensive integration to make. So that when we look at the general journal entry here, and then we further break it back down into those transactions that we saw and provide an export button on this very right-hand screen. It says, here's the general journal entries by detailed out. I can now make entries into any accounting system as long as it has any kind of CSV import. So if I've got the CSV file, I can import that into QuickBooks, into Quick, and so forth. This made it so easy for people to keep their books current, either on a weekly, monthly, or annual basis. They can convert everything on their accounting side. And the only trick to this in doing this update is you have cash going into your system, more likely than not, electronically from your gateway. And as that money hits the cash account, we need to account for the cash in transit, if you wish, or cash clearing. So monies that we're bringing over here, so for example, you probably are currently debiting cash and crediting something in your QuickBooks, maybe sales, whatever, but you really need to be debiting cash and crediting cash clearing so that when you make this entry electronically, you can make it as a debit to cash clearing and a credit to AR or sales or whatever the situation is. So in that fashion, you keep relieving, and any balance in cash clearing would be a timing difference. Monies that have been sent to your processor but have not been processed yet. In other words, have not hit your bank yet. And that delay can be anywhere from overnight to a couple nights for it to actually hit your bank. If you have any questions on that, happy to entertain them, but that's all there is in this area. On the QuickBooks integration, by the way, just to let everyone know, we do not do an account, customer account by customer account integration to your QuickBooks. We have a lot of clients that come over from older systems where a lot of their accounting by clients had to be done in QuickBooks, and as a result of that, they've got every client in the world in there. So there's no matching or mirroring of client accounts because QuickBooks cannot talk back to us. We can talk to it, but it can't talk to us. So if change is made, and let's say we were to do that, and I know there's one accounting system out there that does, the first time that a billing clerk or an accounting clerk makes an adjustment in QuickBooks that is not going to be reflected back in FASTTRAK, you're forever out of balance. Well, you're out of balance in your AR, you're out of balance, let's say with the customer's accounts. It might be updating a name, an address, whatever. If you're going to run a dual system like that, then you just have to face it that you're going to be out of balance. I've talked to people that run it that way, and they say, well, we have a balance since we've been on the system. So it was very important here to say, I need to recognize my pieces of the pie, put them in my accounting system, regardless of what it is, in the proper categories, in account at the what we call the accounting account level, not the customer account level. And QuickBooks, of course, does function from a customer account. All sales, everything's created off that customer account. But that doesn't mean that we can't make general journal entries into AR and sales. So that's the way you need to do it versus having all that detail, comparison and tracking between what QuickBooks says and what FASTTRAK says. We are, and I've explained this many, many times to folks, we are the original source documents for all the transactions, all the orders, all the clients, all the activity in your operation. So if it starts with us, then the detail of all that accounting, and I'm talking about the detail of the order, what was applied, what resources, what vehicle did we assign, what driver did we assign to it, what were the total charges, how were they collected, when it was costed and invoiced, everything comes through us, and then we give your accounting system, complex or simple accounting system, the answer. Here's the answer for today. Here's the answer for the week. Here's the answer for the month. We did X amount of sales. We have X amount of accrued sales. We did X amount in cash and relieving of AR and so forth. So that's the way I've always looked at it for the last couple of decades, and no one yet has told me that well, I've had a couple of people tell me, why don't I finish this side of it and become an accounting system? In other words, put GL accounting into FASTTRAK. That's not one of our missions. It's not our mission to replace any accounting system out there. And there's so many good ones that are inexpensive. It just doesn't make any sense to build inventory and rent and payments and so forth, all the liability side into FASTTRAK. So I hope that answers any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Okay. So today, we covered finalizing job costing and pay. This is where I do all of my finalizing calculations, make sure everything is correct, make any adjustments that I need to make on it. From here, I'm either building invoices, paying the reservation. One thing I do want to point out is everything gets created as a invoice. So even if I go to this particular reservation and pay it immediately here by using the post payments on it, it is creating an invoice. However, it's creating a paid invoice, basically a receipt that you are sending to your customer. You don't have to send them an open invoice and then send them a paid invoice immediately after it. Build invoices. This is a holding area, a filing cabinet, if you would. All of my customers that are waiting for their jobs to be billed out. Also, the manage invoices. This is where I have all of my invoices that have been paid, not paid, just being able to manage them. One thing I do want to show you, I don't think I touched on this here. If I go to the invoice there, highlight it, and I view that invoice, view the selected invoice, as you can see, this one was paid. It gets marked accordingly as paid. Had it not been paid, it still has the open balance on it. And as you see here, it has a zero balance sitting on that one there. Also went into the manage payments area. in there, allowing us to see the different payments that are in there. Manage AR, keep track of who owes me, how much they owe me, how long they've owed me. Statements, letting me create statements to send out to my customers, and the accounting system integration there. Now, all of this stuff that we're doing through here is now starting to flow into our wages and commissions, which we talked about in the others webinar. And it's also starting to now flow into our reports and stats. I'm going to go ahead and draw this one to an end here, because we do have an upcoming webinar, I believe in 3 weeks, on the reports and stats, letting you see all of this revenue, activity, costs, payments, everything is now starting to flow into the reports and stats. So unless we have any other questions, or Eddie has anything he wants to add there, I think we're just about at the end of this webinar. Eddie, anything else you want to add right now?
No, I'm good. Unless there's questions to be answered, I'm good.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks to all for attending.